Hi guys, on this video we're going to be looking at a mock test from Watnall Driving Test Centre, and we're starting just outside the test centre exit. You'll see that on the right there. As we move away, the pupil picks a brilliant gap to pull out, checks a blind spot. The blind spot's really essential when you're moving away every time, and the examiners want to see you doing that very clearly. So leaning forward, looking over your shoulder to make sure that blind area is clear. All they want to see is that when you move away, you've made effective checks and that you know you're safe, and that blind spot being an absolute key one. As we go down the road here, nice and gentle, 30-mile-an-hour road, the pupil's keeping a really nice line as we go along and a really nice pace, especially with the warning on the left there telling us there's a junction coming up and it may be difficult to see what's coming out of that junction. So she's just holding the speed down a little until she can see that junction is clear for certain before building her speed up again. Now up ahead, we're supposed to be turning right at the mini roundabout towards Hucknall. The sign on the left here directing us, you can see the Sat Nav at the bottom there saying right at the mini roundabout. The pupil does miss this turn and goes straight on, but this isn't a fault on your driving test. As long as the direction is taken safely, then it won't go down as a fault at all. So don't worry if you do take a wrong turn on your test. It's not the end of the world. The examiner will reroute you, get you back on track, and you just carry on as normal, as long as, like I say, you've done it safely. So the pupil has tackled the roundabout really nicely, and I can't fault her for that at this point. As we're going along this road, you'll notice it's a 50 road, and my pupil isn't progressing quite to 50 yet, so she's a little bit slow building her speed, but because there's nothing behind us and she does make progress, I'm not going to mark that as a fault. Now this was caused briefly by the limiter being used, so if you do use a speed limiter on your vehicle, just be careful not to let it interfere with your progress. That could have been marked as an ancillary control fault, as it was one of the secondary controls interfering at the time. Now just a little further ahead, we're going to be turning right to bring us back round to get back on the original route. So you'll see the warning we've just passed and then the road up on the right. The pupil was a little bit quick coming into this corner, which meant she actually cut the corner on the way in. You'll see she cuts across that centre line. Now while she is quite far over that centre line, I think because the view is clear and it is a difficult turn, I didn't feel it was worth marking more than a driver fault, and it was slow enough as she turned to not be a massive risk. However, that could very quickly escalate into a serious or dangerous fault if the view is obscured or if there is something coming the other way. So when you're doing your right turns, make sure you don't rush into those corners and you go fully onto your side of the road. Quite a narrow road up here, and it is a 30-mile-an-hour road, so we want to make sure we're aware of that. We're not building our speed too high. You can see the pupils keeping the speed quite low here and keeping tucked in as she went through the gaps with the cars, and with the vehicles ahead as well, we just want to keep that speed low. Just there, I've got my pupil to do her show me question. So you'll get one show me question on your test out of the 7. In this case, it was please demonstrate when it's safe how to wash the front windscreen, which you've just seen happen there. As we're going along, see the speed again is about 25 mile an hour coming past these vehicles, and we've got a couple of bends ahead. So being in this kind of road, we don't want to be going too fast. About 20 to 25 seems appropriate, and as the road opens out more and the view becomes more clear, we could pick up that speed a little bit more. Unfortunately, my pupil gets a little bit excited here and forgets it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone and starts believing it's convinces herself it's a 60-mile-an-hour zone, because the appearance of the road does give that impression. You're in a quite rural sort of road with greenery around you, so be very careful not to get caught out by stuff like that. End of the road, we're turning left, and that will put us back on routes. Just there's the mini roundabout where we should have turned right, and you'll see the national speed limit sign there as we come out of the road. As we come along this road, we've got 2 bends coming up, which we of course don't want to do 60 mile an hour around, especially the second one where we're pulling in quite tight to the left. As we come round that second bend, the road does open out. Remember, it is a national speed limit road, so the examiner will want to see you picking up the speed quite nicely here. And the pupil here makes some really good progress there, getting up to the high 40s, which is absolutely fine if the conditions dictate that. If it's wet, if it's dreary, if it's busy, then you don't want to be going all the way to 60, of course. I'm quite happy at high 40s, 50 mile an hour on this road, and I think the examiners generally would be as well. Just up ahead, you'll see the crest of a hill as we go over the motorway, the M1. So again, this is one of those places where the view is a little bit more restricted, so a slightly lower speed than that 60 is very appropriate. So again, you can see the pupils sitting just over 40 as we come down this section, and that is absolutely fine for that scenario. We've got a couple of lay-bys on the side and driveways, so again, just keep your eyes on those as you're going along, and a warning for a bend coming up. When you start getting into these bends, of course, the examiners want to see the speed coming down, giving you more time to respond to whatever's coming the other way, and better coordination on those bends, so you're keeping yourself completely to your side of the road. Another warning there telling us we've got multiple bends. These ones do become a little bit sharper, so again, the speed needs to come down for these, especially as there's more warnings. We've got that different coloured tarmac, which is a high grip tarmac, and you can see the pupils a little bit wobbly through there, but it's not to the point I'm going to mark anything. She keeps it quite well under control. Just a little bit of a wobble as she tenses up on the approach to the bend, seeing the oncoming car, and into a 30 zone. And just ahead, we've got two roundabouts, and we're going straight ahead at both of them. That is the first exit on this, and they're both signposted as Hucknall. So the trick to these roundabouts is you want to come in on that left-hand lane and follow the left-hand edge of the roundabout. So you'll see the pupil tucking into the left-hand side on the first roundabout quite nicely before coming off. As we get to the second roundabout, that position needs to be a little bit more pronounced because the curve is steeper. So you watch how the pupil handles this, and you'll see she tucks right into that left-hand curb and stays out of the second lane. The second lane, of course, they're marked as right only, where the buses just went. Unlike the Audi in front, who cut through the middle of the lanes, you see my pupil tucks further into the curve, and that's absolutely spot on. Again, with that kind of movement, we want really good mirror use. We want to make sure that if anyone is using that other lane, we're not interfering with them. Up ahead, you can see the cyclist. We may have spotted that a little bit earlier, and that of course is why everybody is slowing down up here, doing about 20 mile an hour in this 30 zone. So the trick behind vehicles that are queuing up behind a cyclist, just give them plenty of room, like my pupil has done here, and then when we get to the front of that queue and we're the one behind the cyclist, it's deciding whether we can give that cyclist enough room to go around them fully. We don't want to be skimming by them too close because that's going to intimidate them, and if they wobble we could end up knocking them off. Plenty of room as you go around, and make sure we can make safe progress around them too and back in front of them before we cause them an issue. We don't want to just skim around them really closely or pull in front of them and have to stop. So I think my pupil made the right choice here by hanging back from the cyclist, not picking up the speed and overtaking, particularly with the junction ahead, the traffic lights, where we're going to be turning left, as you can see on the Sat Nav. For some reason my pupil decides to put a right signal on the approach, then changes it over to a left signal. So she corrects it in enough time to not cause a problem, and that's why I put a driver fault, not serious fault. Just be really mindful of your left and rights. A lot of people seem to get these muddled when they're under pressure, such as when doing mock tests like this. So a little bit of nerves can cause us to just make silly mistakes like that, so just be careful of them. I'm going to get my pupil to pull up on the left in a moment, and of course the trick to this is pick a safe location to pull up, check your mirrors, tell people that you're pulling over, and then make sure you're tucked in nice and cozy to that curb. And then when you move on again, remember that blind spot, remember to check over that shoulder just before you move away, and make sure you're moving out into a safe gap. Don't rush to pull out of that gap, and certainly not if there's cars approaching where you're not certain that you can get away and build your speed up without causing them a problem. The same with passing vehicles like this. When we move on to the other side of the road to go around them, just make sure you can come back in good time so you don't interfere with the oncoming vehicles. As you can see here, this one's looking a little bit more awkward, but there is just enough room to go through. The white car clearing the way as my learner goes through. So again, that was a really nicely timed approach. She just slipped out behind that car, and she was really good on the mirrors there as well, watching the right side before she moved out, because of course if we're moving out we want to know what's in front of us. Same again on those right mirrors, out we go, on the left mirrors, and in we go. Another pull up on the left. So you do several of these on your test. This one in particular is a hill start, so of course the car is facing uphill, and the examiner's just looking that not only that you can move off safely, but also you can control the car on a hill. And that's particularly the case in a manual vehicle where you've got to balance the clutch to get yourself going. In an auto it's not as much of an issue, but there is still the potential to roll back, so you've got to be able to control the car safely when you're moving away, whilst adding in those checks, signals if you need them, and that blind spot check. Again, mirrors before moving out around the van. People is really careful here because the view around that van is appalling. It blocks so much of our view. So anywhere your view is restricted, just slow yourself down more to give yourself more thinking time to deal with that situation. Up ahead we've got slow warning and a warning sign for bend. So again, we're just going to lower that speed, and again the pupil is really nicely here, just bringing it down just below 20 mile an hour. And whilst we could do this a little bit quicker, I think under the circumstances there was no issue with this. There's nothing worth recording as a fault because the road was nice and quiet. It's not like we've got a queue of traffic behind and we're slowing everyone down more than necessary. So your awareness of what's behind you is really important, because of course if you're going much slower than you need to and you're holding queues up, that's going to cause problems, and that's going to cause people to get impatient and start looking to overtake. We want to make good progress where safe, but of course if the road's clear we can afford to be a little more cautious. Another bend, and because we're going downhill the car can carry a little bit more speed, so these kind of scenarios you want to be over the brakes to hold the car back. And again, this pupil brings the speed down by about 6 or 7 mile an hour to do that. Absolutely spot on. Again, really good mirror use, very aware of the road behind as well, that there's nobody close behind who's going to be caused an issue by us slowing down, and that's absolutely spot on. Again, up ahead at the roundabout we'll be taking a left turn. Whenever you're approaching these roundabouts, make sure your signal comes on in good time. My pupil unfortunately put a signal on right at the end. We're literally at the junction when the signal comes on, and that doesn't give anyone time to process what we're doing. So the signal indicates what we are intending to do, and the more time we give people to do that, the better. Of course, if we give the signal too soon, then that's going to be misleading, and that's something else to be mindful of. When I was learning to drive, I was told about 6 to 10 car lengths before the turn, that's when you signal. And as a rough guide, that works really well. But take each situation as it comes, judge it on its own merits, and make sure your signal maximizes that information to other people, but minimizes any misleading information. Another 60 mile an hour road, and you can see the pupils sitting in sort of the mid 40s as we go along here, and I'm quite happy with that. There's nothing behind us that we're holding up. There's a good view ahead, so it's reasonable progress for what we're doing, and it just means she's not rushing herself to get up to the next junction. She's having a little bit of calm as we go along, and that's absolutely fine as long as you're not disrupting traffic. At the roundabout here, we're going to be turning left, and you'll notice the speed sign just before the roundabout. So really important to watch out for these. If you do miss them and you end up going over the speed limit, if you miss the speed limits and you end up going over the speed limit, or you end up going too slow for the road, then that's going to result in problems as you go along, either a speeding issue being recorded as a serious fault on your test, or not making sufficient progress and then disrupting the cars behind, which again can go down as a serious fault. So you've got to find a good balance of speed based on the limit, based on the road conditions. Up ahead you can see we've got some traffic lights and a nice big dual carriageway, loads of room, so we can afford to get that speed up. And the pupil does really nicely here, getting up to 40 miles an hour. There's not really anything going on behind, so I'm not too concerned about being slightly under that speed limit of 50. Equally, there is another lane that people can overtake in if they want to, so there's not so much of an issue on a road like this, as long as it's reasonable progress. If she was sitting at 30, then I would definitely mark that as a fault, but 40 I'm okay with in this situation. Just as we come past these lights here, the road changes and we've got a lot of bends up ahead. So again, the speed is going to come down as we go around those bends. We don't want to rush through, because rushing through, you're just going to end up having difficulty controlling the car as you go along. Just find a nice balance again with that speed, because we don't, like I say, we don't want to go too fast around these bends, but we equally don't want to go too slow. So on this road, in my opinion, about 40 miles an hour is probably the maximum you should go around these bends. If you're not sure, you can always lower the speed more, and that gives you more thinking time as you come out of the bends. And of course, more thinking time means you've got more time to react to any changes ahead, such as vehicles, junctions, or anything else that you might come across on these kind of roads. Just a little further ahead, we're coming up to the Annesley roundabout, and I've got a video that goes round this roundabout up to the M1 junction in more detail, so I'm going to link that at the top at this point, so you can click on that and have a look at it afterwards. As we come up, we're going to go left, and then we've got two small roundabouts straight ahead, and then the motorway junction 27, and we're going straight ahead at that as well. Now these are all signposted A608 Hina, so it's worth watching out for those road signs and destinations as you approach. When we're doing this turn, you can see how far away the junction actually is from the sign, so we want to be careful about the timing of our signals, that we're not too soon, but equally give people plenty of warning before crossing over that line. My pupil was very late at doing that. We have then got a set of traffic lights and a national speed limit sign telling us we're going into a 60 mile an hour road as we turn, 70 if there's barriers in the middle, remember. And the pupil is a little bit cautious going through those lights, looking for traffic from the right. Because it's light controlled, a little glance, make sure that traffic's stopped, but you do have priority and you can keep moving if it's completely safe. The glance, of course, is to make sure that nobody is jumping that light, there's no blue light vehicles or such that's going to cause an issue. As we approach this roundabout, just like the ones earlier that were heading for Hucknall, left lane straight ahead, first exit. And as we go into that roundabout, you'll see the pupil ducks right into the left-hand curb, absolutely spot on. And then off the other side, we've got the warning about two-way traffic. So now it is actually a 60 road. Previously, where we had the barrier, it is 70. So just be very, very mindful of those speed differences. Of course, the speed limits aren't always appropriate. We don't have to get up to 60 or 70 mile an hour because the limit's there. It's just a case of that's the maximum we're allowed to do. So like I said earlier, you've got to adapt your speed to the circumstances. Now my learner is a little bit slow along here because, like I said, it's a 60 mile an hour road and we should be progressing up to that speed where it's safe. Because of the conditions, because we've got a lot of mist in the road, we've got a lot of oncoming vehicles, we've got a few side roads, she does pick up a little bit up to 40 there. I'm not too concerned about the speed because she does continue building her speed then, but that initial part, I can understand the caution. So I'm not going to mark that as a fault. Next roundabout, we're going straight ahead again, and just like the previous one, we use the left-hand lane and we tuck all the way into that left-hand curb to get round it. As an ideal on this one, because the next roundabout requires the right hand lane, you could use the right hand lane to go straight ahead here too, as long as you stick that lane when you exit. So whatever lane you come in the roundabout with, you leave in the same position. As you leave this roundabout, you notice the barriers in the middle, and then we've got the big sign on the left telling us we need the right hand lane for the A608. So if you're not in that lane, get on those mirrors, get that signal on, and gently over, just like my pupil's done here. Another reminder there that the left lane goes left only onto the motorway. For your test, you definitely don't want to do that. Now, I've marked here a response to signs and signals. As we enter the roundabout, there's a sign telling the pupil to go into the left-hand lane as we come around the bend. So I want to see the pupil go straight into that left-hand position, not stay in the right-hand lane as we come around the curve and then have to change it. It might sound a little bit harsh marking that, but that could cause disruption if this vehicle's behind, and it could cause problems for yourself. The worst case, if you're in this position and you can't move left, go around the roundabout fully and come back to this position. But ideally, following that sign, we should be straight into the left-hand lane. If you can change lanes safely, then by all means do. Check your mirrors, get those signals on, make sure you're safe before you do it. However, what we don't want is a panicked reaction about being in the wrong lane and a sudden move across lanes. As we come round, you'll see the lane guides us out to the left, and away we go. This is a national speed limit road, so the examiners, again, they want to see you picking up your speed and getting on with it if it's safe to do so. So looking ahead, nice clear road, you can see the pupil's speed picking up nice and smoothly. Just remember, it's not a race to get up to that speed limit, but if you can do so safely, then you absolutely should. As we come into the village here called Underwood, you'll notice the 30-mile-an-hour sign. So again, the speed comes down quite sharply from 60 to 30. What the examiners want to see again is a nice smooth change with that speed, not a late brake. So you're down to 30 as you reach the signs. Then turn in right, quite a tight turn here, and we've got a few parked cars as we come in. The pupil is a little bit sharp with the steering there, but it wasn't to the point that I felt she didn't have control over the car or it was a risk, so I'm not going to mark anything there. And as we pull up behind this vehicle, again, this is something the examiners will ask you to do on your test. This is an angle start where they'll say to you, pull up behind the vehicle, giving yourself about a car length of space to get out again. All they're after here is that when you move away, you can move out safely, watching out for cars on your right, of course, overtaking, and oncoming vehicles, because you'll be straight out into the wrong side of the road. So you want to make sure you're looking up and down the road effectively before you move out. You can see the give way sign up on the left there. We're going to be turning left at the end of the road. And this junction as well, it's quite hard to see out of until you get right to the end, particularly the building on the left there. And there's almost always parked cars as you come out on the left. So this is one of those we don't want to rush out of that turn. We want to make sure we're safe because we're going straight out into the middle of the road. So if there's an oncoming vehicle, we've got to hold back and let them pass before we pull out around those parked cars. Again, lots of mirror use by the pupil here. She's checking the right and left quite frequently, doing really, really well as we progress along here. The speed's nice and comfortable. We're not rushing down here, and we do have a nice clear view, allowing her to stay out in the middle of the road as we pass by. This change in environment sometimes catches pupils out because we're surrounded by greenery and they get the feeling it should be a national speed limit road, but of course with the lack of speed signs telling us that it's changed, it is still a 30 zone at this point. You'll see the national speed limit signs just up ahead. Keep your speed below 30 until you pass that sign. Then you can progress if it's safe. And again, it's looking up and ahead, making a judgment based on what you can see and what you can't see as well. So when you're approaching bends, we want to consider what's around that bend that we can't see. There could be a cyclist, a tractor, there could be a parked vehicle or a broken down vehicle that's been overtaken. There could be an oncoming car if there's a problem on the other side of the road, and that can happen quite frequently on roads like this. You'll notice as we came into the 60 road there was a flood warning sign, and further down there is a section of road which does flood on the oncoming side, so cars coming around the bend are forced outwards because they can't go through the water because it's too deep, meaning you come up to the bend with oncoming cars on the wrong side, and that's something to be really mindful of. Once you know where it is, it's easier to avoid, but any situations like this, of course, come around the bend, it could be our side of the road that's flooded and we could need to move out onto the oncoming side. So we want to come around with that in mind, that we can stop inside the space we can see. You see my pupils sitting around 40 instead of 60, and that's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that on these conditions. We don't want to be rushing. Like I say, the unseen hazards are the ones that catch you out. Just ahead, this in particular is where we want to bring that speed down. We've got lots of warnings, we've got the bend coming up, so the lowered speed is going to help us see what's coming the other way. This is the section where the right hand side of the road often gets flooded when there's been heavy rain, so vehicles coming the other way can come round and just suddenly veer onto the wrong side of the road, and that's exactly what we're watching out for. Same here as we come round. Pupils keeping the speed nice and steady so she can see what she's doing before accelerating into the straight stretch. More warning signs about the risk of skidding, the junction on the bend as well. So again, just a nice steady speed as we come round. You can see the pupil lowering the speed there and staying nice and cozy on her side of the road, and that's absolutely spot on. One more warning about the bend going the other way this time, where the lorries just came from, and a junction on the right of it, and we've got the speed lowering down to 30 here as well. Just ahead we've got another of these bends with a junction on the side. We've got a slow warning, so again you can see the pupil as she approaches, keeping the car tucked into her side of the road and just lowering that speed ever so slightly to allow herself a safe space before accelerating out of the corner. And that's absolutely spot on. As we come around the bend, we're coming into a 50 road. Once again, we want to see good progress along this road if it's safe to do so. So looking ahead, building that speed up nice and confidently, but not rushing down the road. And you can see the pupil here getting up to 40 miles an hour pretty quickly, just making small adjustments as things ahead change, such as the oncoming vehicle there. As we come down this road, it does look like it's on our side of the road or in the middle of it. As she gets a clear view of it and knows that it's not a problem, the speed picks up again and she keeps it around the 40 mile an hour mark, which again is absolutely fine on this kind of road as long as it's reasonable for the conditions. Up ahead, we're coming to that mini roundabout, which was near the start of the mock test, and we're going straight ahead. The speed does drop to 30 as we approach this as well, so we've got to keep that in mind when we cross the junction. And of course, on mini roundabouts, traffic from the right gets priority, so we're looking at the oncoming cars who may be wanting to turn right, and that would cross our path, putting them down the road on our left. As soon as you do find a gap to cross, the examiners want to see you make good progress. We don't want to hesitate slowing down unnecessarily, because that could cause a problem behind us. Taking the next road on the right here, so again we're reducing our speed, the pupil's covered her mirrors, she's signalled in good time, and in we go. We've got a few warnings there about a weight restriction which doesn't affect us, and the speed ramps. And where there are speed ramps, it implies we should be travelling at a lower speed than the limit. So along roads like this, I'd look at 20 instead of 30 generally. I'm going to ask my pupil to pull up on the right in a moment to do a right reverse manoeuvre, and unfortunately where she pulls over is not ideal. Now the pupil does check her mirrors and signal to pull over, but we've got the road on the right here, and then she continues down the wrong side of the road for quite a distance before actually stopping, and this is just a really sloppy way of pulling over. What we should be doing is picking where we want to stop, mirrors signal, and then pull straight up to that position. Don't drive down the wrong side of the road, and don't start pulling over without knowing where you're actually going to stop. So the right reverse, you'll be asked to pull up on the right like this, and then you'll be asked to reverse about 2 car lengths, keeping reasonably close to the curb. The examiners will tell you when to stop, so you just keep moving until they tell you otherwise. What they want to see on this is that you keep the car reasonably close to the curb and slow, and that you're looking around effectively. And as you notice there, I've given driver fault on both parts there for my learner. The observations, they were okay, but they could have been more consistent. So they want to see regular checks over those shoulders as you move back, particularly if there's driveways on the right, you need to be on that shoulder more. Don't just rely on the mirrors, and don't just stare at one side of the car. Make sure you're looking around frequently. The steering is also a little wobbly as she goes back, and she gets a little bit muddled with which way to turn to keep the car in line with the curb, and as a result she ends up pulling forward to straighten the car up again, and that's got to go down as a driver fault for the correction. Because it didn't then escalate into a problem, it's not going to go as a serious fault. She corrected it and then got the manoeuvre completed quite safely. And again, it's just a case of keeping on those shoulder checks and keeping the car where you want it. So in this case, close to the curb in a straight line until the examiner tells you to stop. Now when it comes to moving away from this side of the road, the blind spot checks are still important. The last place to look, however, is the left side of the car, over your left shoulder and out the back and side of the car before you move. Don't get this muddled by checking your right shoulder before you pull away, because the danger here is on your left side. The end of the road, we're going to take a left turn, and of course mirrors and signal in good time, and we want to make sure the car is tucked into that left hand corner as we reach the end of the road. You can see how wide the curve is and how the pupil leans in, and this is absolutely spot on positioning before joining the new road, and this means the curve is nice and smooth, it's nice and easily done. We're not having to work the steering very hard, it's just a nice relaxed path. One last pull up and move off before we get back around to the test centre. Again, the pupil does really nicely with this, picking a good spot to pull over, checking her blind spot before moving away, and this is a perfect example of how to do that. So nice and tidy with the curb, make sure the car's secure, and then check that shoulder before you move away. Use your signal if there's anyone who could benefit from it, and away you go safely. Left turn at the roundabout, so again nice and tight to the left hand side as we're coming in. Really good mirror use, the signals were timed perfectly, the observations were good. She's looking around for anyone coming from that right hand side who might cause her to have to give way, and that's absolutely spot on again. And then up to the end of the road where we're going to turn left, and that will bring us back to the test centre to wrap up. So there you have another look around Watnall Driving Test Centre, and I hope you found this useful. If you have, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I will try and keep producing more of these videos for you to prepare for your driving test. Thank you for watching, and God bless.